Hey, welcome back to the channel, or if you're new here, welcome to the channel. Either way, I'm so glad to see you. My name is Nick, and I make videos about things I'm interested in. Today, we're bringing it back to cozy games with 5 of my favorite cozy games that aren't farming. Before we start though, if you find that you like this video and would like to see more, make sure you don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you always know when a new video is released. Because I do try to release one every week covering some kind of fun topic which I think you might be interested in. But thank you for sticking with me through that. Now, on to the video. I know you've probably already heard of Cult of the Lamb. It's one of those indie darlings which everyone and their dog loves. And for that reason, I won't spend too much time on it. But I do think it's still worth mentioning. There is a reason, after all, that it's gained so much popularity. Cult of the Lamb is a satanic roguelike hack and slash kind of social management sim where you take on the role of a cult leader, either in the form of a lamb or in the form of a goat if you're feeling kinky, and under the guidance of the evil god that you serve, you are tasked with growing your following and defeating the evil bishops which want to keep this god imprisoned. After narrowly escaping death at the hands of these bishops, you set out on your journey to take revenge and build a thriving cult in the forests. It's such a brilliantly irreverent framing device, and I absolutely love all the innuendos and satanic imagery. It's just such a brilliantly unique setting for a roguelike hack and slash. The combat is smooth and easy to understand, though certainly has its own level of difficulty. It's a great introduction at lower difficulty levels to the hack and slash genre. And it doesn't really take the Souls-inspired attack, dodge, attack rhythm that so many of these types of games lean on. Instead, deciding to focus more on fast-paced and frenetic combat, which requires you to optimize your positioning and attacks while still making sure the enemy doesn't land too many hits on you. It's not particularly innovative in its combat, but it just does it so well that jumping in for another run always feels compelling, and they last long enough to keep you interested and not leave you exhausted with the game at the end of the run. But that's not all. You also have to build your community, and you do this by freeing other animals on your runs who would have otherwise been sacrificed to keep your patron imprisoned. Once they're free, you take them back to your camp and put them to work, either worshipping you, or cleaning up, or running the farm. Whatever it is, you're now responsible for them and can do with them as you please. I won't spoil too much here because I think it's really fun to find all the different f***ed up ways you can treat your villagers. And if you're the type who plays Animal Crossing and wishes you could just do all kinds of horrible things to your villagers, well, the village management part of this game might just satisfy that urge. Altogether though, this game is just an instant classic. The art is amazing, the music is phenomenal, the animations leave absolutely nothing on the table, and while it certainly has a more satanic bend to it, it still has enough charm to make it the perfect game to cuddle up on a cold winter night with a warm cup of coffee and play for hours. Oh, and did I mention you can also play with a friend? It's just such a great example of how focusing on the right things in a game and doing those things right can lead to a phenomenally successful game. But now, let's take a look at a game which is a bit more chill, but still up the same vein as Cult of the Lamb, with Moonlighter is a roguelike dungeon exploration game with Zelda influences, which it wears on its sleeve. If you're looking for Zelda puzzles, I would point you to Questmaster. That's going to be right up your alley. But if you like the dungeon combat of Zelda and thought it was not quite Soulsy enough, then this is going to be for you. However, where it breaks a bit from the roguelike experience is in its overworld, if you want to call it that. Basically, there's a town that you live in and run a shop in, and every day after adventuring in the dungeons, you come back and either sell whatever treasures you've plundered, or you use it to upgrade your shop or equipment. But what makes this shop mechanic unique is that you're not simply selling everything for a default price which the game sets for you. No, instead you have to figure out through trial and error what the best price to sell everything at is. And this isn't a one-time solution either. Just because you found the median acceptable price doesn't mean that you should just stick with that. Different items have different desirabilities, and you can experiment with that too and see what you can get away with overcharging for and by how much. Now, this might sound like a lot, and it kind of is, but if you're someone with an optimization brain and you're someone who really likes learning through trial and error instead of being given a tutorial, I think this mechanic will tickle you in just the right way. And the same goes for the combat. On the whole, it's a pretty basic Souls-like rhythm, at least with the sword and shield, but there are other weapons which will shake up the playstyle as you go and keep things fresh. And the looting is, I think, sufficiently both rewarding and frustrating. You don't want a roguelike to be too easy, but you also don't want it to be ball-bustingly hard. And I think Moonlighter hits a pretty good balance of the two. I found myself really frustrated at all the loot that I was losing every time I would die, and the death screen showing you everything from your inventory that you lost every single time certainly helps to hit that feeling home. However, they do give you a few slots to keep anything you really don't want to lose from every run, so they are somewhat forgiving in that regard. And while death can certainly sneak up on you pretty quick, I don't think it's ever unfair. You always know why you died, and things don't get so chaotic that you feel like you had no possible way of saving yourself. I'm certainly not the person to look to when it comes to combat critiques. The overall vibe, though, is impeccable. All the animations and cutscenes are wonderfully executed, the story is pretty intriguing and works well to keep you coming back to try and figure out the mystery of these dungeons, and overall it just really feels like a unique game with influences from all my favorite titles. So if you were a Zelda kid and you're looking for something fun to try out, but just step a little bit outside of the Nintendo wheelhouse, Moonlighter is going to be a great game to put on your list. But speaking of unique concepts and out there ideas, let's take a look at Okay, I can foresee some of you already squinting at the screen and saying, really? Death Stranding, the brainchild of the notoriously nutty mind behind the Metal Gear Solid games, Hideo Kojima? Cozy? And for that, I don't blame you. It's a bit of a weird pick, and I certainly think there is a valid case against this counting as a cozy game. However, my working and very much not universal definition of cozy game is really any game that you can use as a comfort game. If you're a returning viewer here, you'll know that the stance that I generally take is that if you find a game cozy, it's a cozy game. So I'm not particularly exclusive when it comes to games that I include under that tag. But okay, why? What makes this trippy time travel, ghost extinction, brain-bending narrative walking simulator a suitable entry for this list? Well, for me, it comes down to the main mechanic, the walking. I recently briefly covered a game called Miro, and those of you who saw that video will know my main critique of it is that it didn't do anything particularly interesting with the space between objectives. It was basically just flat expanses of alien territory from one place to the next. I think a big part of the reason I felt it was so lacking was because of the standard that had been set by Death Stranding. The main conceit of Death Stranding's mechanics is that the world we know it has ceased to exist, and all the roads and other means of travel have become untenable. The world is largely uninhabitable, and civilization has been driven underground. This naturally presents a bit of an issue in the way of acquiring new things, like, say, a new water chip, or new tech which could help you conduct your research better. Or getting rid of bodies, which, if not taken to a furnace to be cremated, will explode and consume you and the surrounding environment in what the game calls a void out. So, this world relies on a class of people called porters to take important packages from one place to another. And this is one of the games I had my eye on from the day it was announced, and I picked it up the second that I could back when it came out. And I remember people at the time being very split on whether it was a good game or not. The main complaint being that it's just a FedEx simulator. And while I can certainly understand why some people might say that as a criticism, I think it actually makes the game perfect for a cozy games list. I will certainly agree that the main story and the cinematic cutscenes are maybe not the most traditionally cozy. However, those really don't make up the main bulk of the game. Most of your hundreds of hours spent in this game are going to be spent traversing the world, and while you can fairly easily beeline the story, you get side missions and objectives thrown at you left and right, and if you're the type to get wrapped up in exploration and side objectives, there are seemingly endless things to do in this game. And all the while you're traversing this crazy new world, you're not only making your own travel easier, but you're making travel for other players easier too. For every region you connect to the chiral network, you're able to see structures and vehicles that other players have constructed to help you get from place to place. And regular viewers of the channel will know, I think, a lot of what makes a cozy game feel cozy is a sense of community, be it Doyleist or Watsonian, and this game does the former phenomenally. Most games rely on community to simply grow in Discord chats or some other third-party platform, and usually rely on users to do the work to find each other and connect. Death Stranding, however, bakes it into the game. And if you're like me, a bit on the socially awkward side, and leaving comments on public chat rooms makes your heart race faster than standing on the edge of a cliff, you'll be happy to know that they are able to build a sense of community without requiring any direct communication. It's a passive sense that other players are thinking about you and trying to help you in some small way that they can, and that you then in turn can help them when you can. Every time you place a rope at the top of a difficult to scale cliff or a temporary bunker in a convenient location, you know that you're helping someone else ease their journey too. So instead of relying on people coming together around the game itself becomes the medium by which people come together and build that community. Again, all in a very introvert-friendly manner, which I very much appreciate. But aside from the community, the main thing I find cozy about this game is just walking around the world. While there are certain environmental hazards like raider camps and ghost encounters, which can get your blood pumping, the majority of the game is about overcoming the challenge that is the world, and puzzle solving your way from one location to another. Every step you take has the potential to knock you off balance and ruin your cargo, but the game still does a great job letting you feel in control. Most of the travel around the world is conducted on foot, and so it's pretty slow going, especially in the earlier parts of the game. But in my opinion, that is where the game shines. It's a really meditative and unique experience making your way around the world of Death Stranding. And while the game doesn't have an in-game music player, every once in a while you'll get a really great piece of music playing while you're approaching your destination, and those moments just really hit. I do wish they had added like a diegetic MP3 player or something like that so you could always be listening to the game's amazing soundtrack, but it's also the perfect game to play with some chill lo-fi beats on in the background. I really don't have much more to say about this game as pertains to cozy games. If you're watching my gameplay and aren't convinced that this is a cozy game, then maybe try out our next game on the list. Flyknight is a game which takes after the tradition of Kingsfield, which, if you're unaware, is the predecessor to the Souls games, and given that Flyknight comes after both of those games, it takes heavy inspiration from both. However, it is very much more on the Kingsfield side of the fence. What that means, because I'm sure most of you haven't actually played those games, is that it's a dark fantasy exploration RPG, which features first-person slow and rather clunky combat. Now, while that might sound like a bad thing, it's not, at least not in its current iteration. While the combat in Kingsfield, I heard, leaves something to be desired, the implementation in Flyknight certainly does not. While it does feel clunky and imprecise, I think that mostly comes from the game's insistence on committing to your moves. Instead of allowing you to cancel mid-attack and change your mind, the game makes you carry out whatever move you started, regardless of the consequences. And while that may seem a bit harsh, it ultimately leads to a pretty great sense of accomplishment and skill when you actually do manage to get a good feel of the game's mechanics. The game's focus on exploration makes for a really compelling and gripping experience. Plus, the general framing device of being a Flyknight, while on the surface, just seems like a bit of a goofy joke, and it certainly did start that way because this game was originally just a game jam game, as I learned from Iron Pineapple when I learned about this game in the first place. The dev actually did build on the concept in a really cool way, because the combat focuses on dismemberment and focusing attacks on your enemy's limbs to defeat them instead of just always attacking their center mass. So the idea of using bugs is not only a cute little bit of flavor, but also makes sense mechanically. Overall though, Flyknight is just such a vibe. I don't know quite how to describe it other than that. It's just one of those rare indie games that absolutely hits on every front. The art style is an incredible low poly, I'm told, RuneScape-inspired look, which just adds to the cozy early 2000s PC game vibe, which is just so much fun. And the world is shockingly fleshed out for such a small indie game like this. I mean, is it Elden Ring? No, obviously not, but it was never trying to be that. It's a really great, relatively linear King Souls game, and frankly, what more could you ask for? I actually think this might be a really great introduction to Souls-style combat. It's unforgiving, but it's not particularly difficult. Enemies aren't super spongy, and while they are lethal, and you can lose a battle very quickly if you're not paying attention, they aren't unfair by any stretch, and you really don't need to be a Souls veteran like Pine to love this game. If you're kind of curious about Souls games, but are a bit put off by their reputation for difficulty and general gloomy and serious aesthetic, I think Flyknight might be the perfect starting point for you. It's a cute, mid-level difficulty take on the King Souls formula, and I loved every minute I had with it. I found myself just wanting to push on to the next bonfire over and over again, and that's not usually something I get with Souls games. But speaking of unorthodox Souls games, let's check out the last game for today, a game which holds a bit of a special place in my heart. Guarde is a Souls-like in its combat, and that's about it. You're not going to be getting any dark fantasy, Bloodborne, gothic-y vibes here. Instead, you're getting a fast-talking, ever-quipping, bisexual Spanish conquistadora rebel fighting against the powers that be. It's such a fun time. The world is a bright and vibrant place, and the overall vibes are lighthearted and goofy. It doesn't take itself too seriously, which I always love to see in a game. But that being said, it also doesn't go full Marvel and just undercut itself at every turn. There is, after all the goofiness, a serious and personal story. But the main focus really is in the combat, and the combat is amazing. Where in most Souls-likes, you get a general rhythm of attack, dodge, repeat. Guarde mixes things up. While you certainly can go into a combat encounter with that mindset, you're probably not going to get too far. The game is much more focused around using your environment to your advantage, and to that end, they let you do all sorts of cool things, from kicking guys off the side of the pier, to tossing a bucket on their head to confuse them. The environmental combat is some of the most compelling I've seen in any kind of Souls-like. And the overall lighthearted atmosphere lends itself to this game being one of the all-time great cozy games for gamers who want a bit more of a challenge out of their cozy games. And while I don't always want that, I do from time to time, and don't get me wrong, I love a good Bloodborne gothic setting, but sometimes I want the great combat with a bit less of the downer atmosphere. And for that, Guarde is amazing. If you've been watching the gameplay and thinking you would be even a little bit interested in playing this game, I implore you to try it out. It's one I think that is going under far too many people's radar, but it's not one you're going to want to miss. But that's just about all we have time for today. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you want more like it, make sure you like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss another video. And if you want, you can also join the channel Discord and talk about all things cozy with other like-minded cozy gamers. But other than that, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope to see you here next time, and as always, happy gaming.